When a chief financial officer of Indian origin in South Africa uncovered suspicious payments in the Gauteng Department of Health, she froze the money flowing into fake companies and shell corporations. She did this knowing full well that she had just put a target on her back. She followed the law, did her job, and for that she was gunned down outside her home in Johannesburg. Her death exposed how deeply corruption runs in modern South Africa and how easily the law abandons those who die to uphold it. This is the story of Babita Deokaran, a whistleblower, a single mother, and an honest woman whose courage became the stuff of legends. Hi, welcome to Collectively Vigilant. I'm Dr. D. If you're new here, well, welcome. Here at Collectively Vigilant, we learn the law through true crime. And if that sounds good to you, please consider subscribing to this channel. And who am I? Well, I'm a professor and a lawyer who's really into true crime. The release schedule has shifted a bit now that the fall semester is in full swing. So now I upload sort of every other Saturday evening. And let me just say a quick thank you to all of you who've become one of the 11,000 subscribers to this channel. I know that you can be spending your time watching anything else, so I really appreciate that you've chosen to be with me here today. So, without further ado, let's quickly get on to the story of Babita Deokaran. Perhaps it's because Babita Deokaran is the splitting image of an aunt of mine and happens to share the name of yet another aunt of mine that I was initially attracted to her story back when the news broke of her assassination in the year 2021. A few weeks ago, when a book written by an intrepid investigative journalist, Jeff Wicks, came out, I devoured that book very quickly from cover to cover, and I will link that book in the description box below. And it's actually just because of the deep dive provided by this book that I was able to get the facts in this video right. Because it turns out that Babita Deokaran was just one of the many victims of South Africa's corrupt bureaucracy, the history of which is intertwined with the story of Babita. Now, let's learn a little bit about Babita Deokaran, who was born in Durban on November 30th of 1968 in a family with 7 other siblings to her father, Motilal Deokaran, and her mother, Cicely Deokaran. The family lived as a family of 9 in a 2-bedroom red brick house in the workers' compound on the Thorngart Hewlett plantations. Babita's father worked as a clerk at the sugarcane plantation. He was tasked with overseeing the men who labored in the sugarcane fields, just like his own father had before him. Her grandfather had grown up in exactly the same compound with 10 other siblings. Babita's mother was also from an indentured family, just like her father was, and was a homemaker. The life for this family was extremely hard. Babita's mom would make samosas every single day and send her 7 children out to sell them around the neighborhood so that she could make some meager money for the family. All the siblings understood that performing well at school was the only way they can claw their way out of poverty. And Babita did just that. She was a straight A student and was great at math and accounting. And that's what she did right out of high school when she started working as an intern at the age of 18. Though that's not what she really wanted to do. She really wanted to go study the law, but her family simply had no money to fund her education. But it wasn't just the crushing weight of poverty, but it was also the fact that Babita was a South Asian in South Africa under an apartheid regime. In 1987, when Babita started her first job in Durban as a casual worker without any pay for the House of Delegates, which is the parliamentary chamber established for the South Asian Indians under apartheid, she received a living allowance of about $2 a day. And this was the humble way in which she began to work right at the bottom of the totem pole of civil services in South Africa. Later on, when another opportunity opened to work in civil services in Johannesburg, she became the first person in her family to move outside of Durban. And while she was there, she helped several family members stay and get an education. She worked there for 5 years and then returned to Durban for a permanent clerical position, and then she began to work tirelessly in that job. It's no wonder, owing to her work ethic, that promotions followed one after another, and by the time it was the year 2006, Babita helped oversee the finances of the Gauteng Health Department. Now, think of her as someone who was almost second in command by the time COVID 19 hit. She helped oversee the entire region of Gauteng, which includes Johannesburg and two other metropolitan cities, the names of which are so complicated, I fear that I'm going to butcher them, so I'm not going to say it. But it's Johannesburg and two other cities. Basically, her role meant that she oversaw billions of dollars in hospital budgets, in medical contracts, in supplier payments. In the US, if I was to put this in sort of US terms, it would be managing the equivalent of $3 billion of healthcare budget, which would be basically like overseeing the health department of the entire state of Delaware or New Hampshire, or even almost like running the health department of Estonia or Iceland. And for doing all this work so diligently, Babita was paid a meager salary of $75,000 to $80,000 each year, which was basically the salary of a government servant. She was the kind of person who was so grateful that her siblings and her had been able to claw their way out of poverty that she never complained. She was diligent and hardworking, and she was a brilliant single mother to her teenage daughter Thiara. To fully grasp why the job of being a chief accountant of the Gauteng's Department of Health in the finance department would put Babita's life in danger, we have to go back for a little history lesson to understand how South Africa morphed as a young democracy since its liberation from the British in 1994. So I think everybody knows about Nelson Mandela, who was the father of South Africa. Along with Mandela, there was another leader who was also a father figure to the country, a leader by the name of Chris Hani, whose words turned out to be completely prophetic. Hani feared that South Africa's liberators would become court elites who would drive around in Mercedes Benzes, using the resources of this country to live in palaces and gather riches, unquote. Post 1994, the democratic government inherited deeply in unequal apartheid regime structures. Corruption soon became entrenched in these political elite circles. As the years passed, power calcified among the hands of the ruling party members, which was the African National Congress, and the machinery of liberation soon morphed into a machinery for personal enrichment for greedy politicians. What began as a democracy of ideals in 1994 slipped into a system of patronage where tenders became currency, loyalty outweighed integrity. By the year 2010, state capture was no longer a metaphor but an actual reality. Public funds were looted, institutions were completely hollowed out, and whistleblowers were silenced. The dream of freedom, which remained on paper only, while corruption basically ran rampant in the marketplace of thieves. By the time Jacob Zuma became the president of the country in May of 2009 and remained in power for the next 9 years until February of 2018, corruption was so rampant that that became the only currency in South Africa. His rule is widely regarded as the epicenter of South Africa's state capture era, a period when government institutions, state-owned companies, and procurement systems were systematically looted through networks of political cronies and private businessmen, most notorious among them being the Gupta family. Zuma survived countless scandals. He misused public funds to fund his own private homestead. He made massive amounts of money for giving kickbacks on state contracts, and he largely controlled the ANC and security services. Eventually, after 9 years, pressure built on this man from his own political party, following public outrage, which forced him into resignation on February 14th of 2018, paving the way for yet another president, Cyril Ramaphosa. But Jacob Zuma's departure did little for the corruption for the likes of Babita Deokaran, who worked in the system and flagged fake companies who had applied for tenders and government contracts and froze payments. People like her were penalized, just like other whistleblowers in South Africa are. She was accused of corruption herself, and she was in fact put on administrative leave without pay. This is the kind of ironic farce that plagues the lives of all those who speak out against corruption in South Africa. She was in fact suspended for close to a year. This whole time, she didn't have the heart to tell her family that she was so incredibly close to, that she had been let go from her job because she was an honest official. So every day she would get wake up and get dressed by 6:30, drop her daughter off to school, and then quietly return home to work on her appeal to get her job back. Once she returned, she didn't tiptoe the line that the corrupt officials around her wanted her to. She, in fact, flagged payments, froze payments, and then she let her entire team know what she was doing. In fact, she wrote an email to her CEO, her CFO, and even sent a WhatsApp message shortly before her assassination that she feared for her own life. Unfortunately, Babita's fears were realized on Monday, 23rd of August of 2021, the last day of Babita's life, when six men known as the Eisenkibi or hired killers lay in wait for Babita, who came back home after dropping her daughter off at school. On her way, just like usual, she picked up groceries, then picked up her house help in her car, and as she entered her driveway, six hired killers, who were hired either by one or many of the powerful politicians, put 12 bullets in her body. A few hours later, in hospital, her family had to make the agonizing decision to unplug her ventilator. Despite the rhetoric of the CFO and the empty condolence messages from politicians, money was later released to all the shell companies, equaling millions of dollars, which was nothing short of spitting in the face of Babita's sacrifice and signaling to anyone who dared to break ranks or rat out corrupt politicians around them that the price of honesty in South Africa is either bribes or bullets. And the police were not in the least interested in trying to figure out who was really the culprit. In fact, the police didn't even look through Babita's laptop or phone or check who she truly feared. It was the journalist Jeff Wicks, whose unrelenting advocacy, along with the Deokaran siblings, who have kept Babita's name alive. The people who gave the order for the killing of Babita are still roaming free, empowered more than ever by their fellow crooked politicians who are always looking out for them. After year-long investigation by News 24 in cooperation with Babita's family and fellow whistleblowers, they have fought to keep Babita's memory and her sacrifice alive. Her daughter has had to grow up in her aunts and uncles' homes and has academically triumphed despite this immeasurable tragedy. Now, let's look at the whistleblower laws that failed Babita and continue to fail so many others. South Africa's whistleblower protection laws look good on paper, but they fail badly in practice. The main law is called the Protected Disclosure Act, or PDA, of the year 2000. It's supposed to shield employees who expose corruption or misconduct inside government or inside private companies. In reality, it offers absolutely no safety. It only covers people after they've already suffered retaliation and does not guarantee anonymity of whistleblowers and provides absolutely no financial or physical protection. There is also no dedicated agency to enforce these whistleblower laws, meaning that whistleblowers are often left to fight alone in the court. Worse, they face threats, they lose their job, and they even get assassinated. That's why activists call this law, quote, protection by obituary, unquote. South Africa honors its whistleblowers only after they're dead. The weaknesses of the South African whistleblower framework is deliberate, it's not accidental. Politics and bureaucratic elites have little incentive to strengthen laws that could expose their very own graft. As a result, the system is rigged for silence, investigations stall, police ignores threats every single day, and witnesses vanish into fear or they're just dead. Even high profile cases like Babita Deokaran's murder have not spurred any real reform in South Africa. Years later, her killers, those ones who actually physically killed her, are, yes, they're in jail, but those who ordered the hit remain untouched. Without independent enforcement or guaranteed protection or any sort of financial support, those who come forward have only one message delivered to them. And that message is brutal and clear. In South Africa, telling the truth can cost you your life. Unfortunately, this is where the story of Babita Deokaran and all the whistleblowers, their stories, that's exactly where it stands today. As I close this video, I will urge you again to buy Mr. Wicks' book, because it's only because of intrepid journalists like him that we know about brilliant women like Babita. So, this is where I'll stop for today. But until I see you again, stay collectively vigilant.